So I watched a couple movies this week where they were very different, but I enjoyed both of them in different ways. I went to AMC the other day and watched Triangle of Sadness, which kind of just hit my radar recently. I saw it pop up on a couple lists and I saw it won the Palme d'Or this year, which is a very pinky
Yeah.
fancy award for one of the best movies of the year, right?
Right.
So I look into it. It says it stars Woody Harrelson. All right, I like Woody Harrelson. No one else I've ever heard of. Okay, this is weird. It's 2.5 hours long. Like, okay, this is really weird.
Wow.
And it's a comedy. So now I'm thrown off and I gotta go see this movie. It's the best way I've seen it described is if you took like a lowbrow comedy concept and made it highbrow. So you're like, oh, this is not laugh out loud funny, but sometimes it is. It's very smart funny, but in very dumb ways. For any viewers or listeners out there, if you've seen White Lotus on HBO, it has similar vibes to that where I don't know how else to describe it, but it's got that same vibe. Not always laugh out loud funny, but delightful in various ways. The basic plot is these very upper crust rich people, old like weapons manufacturing company owners and mixed with social media influencers, all invited onto this boat, this yacht for like a 5-day cruise. And the captain is Woody Harrelson. And basically, they're invited onto this yacht to enjoy a relaxing cruise in the lap of luxury. Woody Harrelson's captain is a bit unhinged. Things don't go according to plan. And it very much is a eat the rich style movie where you kind of bask in watching rich people suffer. So that
That's yeah. The title itself is not gonna get me. Like you tell me a movie is called A Triangle of Sadness. I see no way that I'm going to leave that movie in a good mood in any way, shape, or form.
I know,
That's
and
not
what
a feeling I don't mind feeling sad and everything, but like you put it in the title like that, I feel like you're about to polarize.
You said this was a foreign film? What was it?
it's not foreign film. It won the Palme d'Or, which is a Cannes award, I believe, in France.
How did they stretch that concept into 2.5 hours?
That is a great question because they did. I will say I felt the runtime. It was too long, but I've read a lot of reviews from folks who said that they got so wrapped up in it, they didn't notice at all until they left. So that's going to be your mileage may vary, but they do keep with that concept. It's cut literally into 3 parts, like on screen, it will be part 1, part 2. So that's one way that they kind of make each portion of it its own thing, but it is interesting. And what sucks is I don't imagine either of you will watch it. So I really want to spoil it because it's very funny, but it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. You saw it in theater?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know when I would
It'll be
have to.
streaming somewhere sometime.
probably. And then the other movie I watched last night on Apple TV was this new Selena Gomez documentary, My Mind.
Yeah.
Oh my
Last
God.
Friday.
Incredible. It's really good.
Yeah.
She's really
Which one's Selena Gomez?
Selena Gomez.
Only Murders in the Building.
Only Murders in the Building, famous from Wizards
Well,
of Waverly Place.
I was gonna say, is she the wizard? Is she the one that was like the babysitter with all the kids?
I never watched Wizards of Waverly Place, so I don't know the plot or the family structure, but she was a witch, I think.
Yes, she was a wizard.
And now she's like international pop star.
I always
Um,
confuse her with somebody. Did she do a movie where she and some other Disney starling were like long lost twins or something like that?
I don't.
Prince and the Pauper kind of movie.
I only
It
remember.
was Alex Russo.
On
that
Wizards,
was in
yeah.
that movie.
She did a Disney Channel original movie with Demi Lovato called Princess Protection.
Maybe that's the other one.
You would know her
other
from
one.
Strange Things like that.
Didn't-
But anyway,
Keep
so
'em all straight, man.
she's had like a really rough go in her personal life over the last several years. She was diagnosed with lupus and nearly died and had to get a kidney transplant. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and has fought with a lot of mental health struggles. And that's what the documentary is about, is her managing her life and her career through her mental health struggles and why she wants to make that a more central part of her career. And it's really sad at times because you can see like people in her own circle are fairly demeaning to her, and it was frustrating to watch. But honestly, I was impressed with how vulnerable it was. Very good movie.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm very intrigued. She's done a lot recently, and then it has really like shined a light on a lot of things, especially like autoimmune disease and mental health stuff. So it's really cool to see, and I'm very interested in that. I saw that the other day because I watched an Apple TV or Apple TV Plus, whatever their streaming service is.
Yeah.
And I saw that on there. And the one that I watched was The Greatest Beer Run Ever with Zac Efron. And, it's got Zac Efron, Russell Crowe, Bill Murray, and there's some other people in there that I can't remember fully, but it was a lot of fun. It wasn't anything groundbreaking, but it was a genuinely just kind of a fun watch. It takes place
Hmm.
during the Vietnam War. Zac Efron has some friends who are overseas, and some way, shape, or form gets this idea where he's going to show their support by going to Vietnam and bringing them a beer. A- And he has this duffel bag. He somehow gets into Vietnam. People think that he's with the CIA, and he just like leans into it and is able to find his friends and deliver beer. But there's also a nice little war commentary where, you starts off very like pro Vietnam. And then whenever he gets there, he sees like the conditions and is a part of it. Like he gets to aspects of the war that the media can't get to. And some of the soldiers aren't getting to, and that they're not reporting the truth on. And so
Wow.
throughout this, he really changed his perspective. And it's a really interesting watch. I was really surprised and it was very enjoyable. Sorry.
True story, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Or based on one?
Based on a true story. I believe I
'Cause
can't
I
remember
know
if it's a book or not, but they have pictures of the boys at the end of the movie. And it's a very, especially whenever that is a real story, it's very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, the Vietnam War was, I believe, like the first really televised war. That's an interesting angle,
Yeah.
how it's displayed in the media and all that.
Yeah, and
Honestly, I was very surprised with how much I enjoyed it.
and there's always you do a little bit of research, and there's always I don't know when exactly, but like war used to be really disorganized. Like there's all kinds of crazy stories from like World War II or the Korean War, the Vietnam era of like people like they go AWOL and then like something like go on like some kind of crazy adventure happens or some kind of event happens in the middle of battle that like you could write a whole like it feels like the inspiration for a movie, that type of thing. I feel like nowadays, like they've gotten the military so regulated that like it's really hard to do crazy things. That's not to say that stuff doesn't happen ever, but
Right.
yeah, I don't know. Conversely or contrastly, I watched a movie that was very much not inspired by true events. I caught up on a movie from earlier this year, and that was Uncharted,
Oh,
starring Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. And it was fun. It was okay.
yeah.
I don't play Uncharted. I did watch somebody play Uncharted 4. Watched a friend play, and it looked like very fun, very character driven kind of game. This was all right. I could see them doing another one. I think that the premise is there. It kind of felt like a really safe movie though. I didn't feel like it really stepped it up compared to like, it felt like it was trying to be too similar to the game, which is that's always the problem. It's trying to really capture the essence of the game, and I think it did that, but it didn't really elevate.
I would agree. As I played all 4 games, and I would agree that it was a really good adaptation of a video game. And there were some moments that were like very video gaming, and I really enjoyed that. But I would say agree. It was your basic action, adventure, fun time movie. I enjoyed it, and I do hope they do a next one because I think that they can, if they follow the structure of the games, they do get a little more character, but they still continue to be the action adventure. So you'll get a nice balance if they continue with the characters.
Yeah, I mean, it was good enough, right? It was fine.
Yeah.
That's kinda how I felt about it. I wasn't upset on it. I played a little bit of the Uncharted games. I haven't played them all through or anything, but enough to where I could see like, okay, this looks like the game and kinda matches the vibe of the game. And I do think that can be a problem sometimes, like you said, David. But overall, it was fine, but it was very safe. Tom Holland is a very safe casting choice.
Mm.
I guess Mark Wahlberg is. I don't really know why, but people put him in anything.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind another one. It's very similar to the latest Tomb Raider movie they did with Alicia Vikander. Just kind of there. It's good, fine. Yeah, all right. I'll watch it on Netflix.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's what you did. I think I've watched it on Netflix again since it came out, just because it was there.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's fine. This week on the show, so many sequels that we're here to do. We're talking about a movie that is better than that. It's better than that. I think most
Everything we've talked about so far.
maybe we're talking about Black Panther on the show today to get ready for Wakanda Forever coming out next week or this week, or you know what? It's podcast whenever you listen to it.
Right.
This is a tough one to come to because of the circumstances surrounding Chadwick Boseman, right? Because it's impossible to watch this movie without knowing that now. And I don't know. The first thing I want to ask is, did that affect y'all's viewing as much as it did mine?
I wouldn't say it impacted me in any way, shape, or form other than, I mean, this movie's already just so good. I mean, it's a very fascinating to see all of the fight choreography with it, with knowing everything that's going into it. But I mean, still brings it.
Yeah, it affected my wife. She really struggled specifically. T'Challa goes to the ancestral plane and he's talking to his father there. That conversation really got to her. I didn't struggle with it as much as I thought. And I truly believe it is because, regardless of Black Panther as a character, Chadwick Boseman as an actor, I think every time I've ever seen him, so is the character in that moment that I almost don't see him as, you know what I mean? Like, I don't see him as the actor. Like, I didn't see this. I wasn't watching this and I was thinking about Chadwick Boseman as much. I was like, he was the character. I couldn't separate them. But it was devastating. It was revealed in 2020 when he passed away that he had stage 4 colon cancer and that it was diagnosed in 2016. So most of his time, for most of his filmography, or from 2016 onward, he was dealing with this and having surgeries and having treatments. And it's kind of incredible that he was going through that. And it makes these performances kind of retroactively feel somehow more admirable. Can you consider what he was going through without telling anyone? So it didn't impact me as much as I thought until the end. When it was over and it was done, it was kind of like, I started thinking about how, kind of like that, in 2008, it was like how it kind of felt like knowing we were never going to see another performance from Heath Ledger. Now we're never going to see another performance from Chadwick Boseman. And man, he just got great performance after great performance. So like, we have no shortage of like his stuff is immortal. I was going to ask, do you guys remember the first time you ever saw Chadwick Boseman in something?
I mean, I don't know, because I don't know that I would have even noticed that it was him prior to Black Panther. So I'm going to say no. My memory would be this movie. I don't remember him from anything else.
I had seen 42 on the charter bus that my family takes to the football games. They rent movies to put on the bus. And I had watched that, and I'm a big baseball fan. And so Jackie Robinson is a story that I have always enjoyed anyway. And so he delivered a great performance in the movie. I mean, look, I think for me, the reason that it didn't impact as much is because he knew what he had, right? He continued to do all of those performances, whether it was getting jacked and looking like a superhero for everything. He knew what he had. He didn't tell anybody else, and he put everything he had into those performances. And you look at his filmography, and he has done a lot of historically predominant Black figures. And I think that, I'm assuming, but I see his filmography and knowing what he had, I believe that he wanted those performances to stand out and be inspirational. Everyone really is, whether it's James Brown or Jackie Robinson or Black Panther. I mean, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I mean, everything he did, he gave it everything. And so I think that it just enhances the performance, and it doesn't take it away. It just makes me appreciate it more in the moment.
For me, without knowing it at the time, the first time I ever saw Chadwick Boseman, and I never fail to bring up this show, but it was an episode of Justified where he plays a former criminal turned street magician named Flex. And this was way before else I would see him in. I didn't know it at the time how big he was going to be. But going back, this was like 2011, 2012. You go back and it was just like, he's really funny in the role, and he's very he's very intimidating in the role because he's got a very dark past, but he's like trying to turn it around with street magic. He wants to be Chris Angel. Anyway, it's a sort of a hidden gem performance by him. But yeah, I don't know. Like you said, I So I would go on and I would watch all this other stuff with him in, whether it was Get On Up or, like you said, 42. I never got to see the movie where he plays Thurgood Marshall, but I really want to check that out. So, like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that was a little bit off track, but I thought it'd be interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, he's incredible in everything he's done. I can only repeat what y'all have said. This movie is what really catapulted him into stardom, of course. But really, this is it remind me, is this the second time we've seen Black Panther? Because he's introduced in
Yeah.
Civil War.
Right.
So we get to see him kind of a little bit. I get an introduction to him at least in Captain America Civil War, and then to transition into this full-blown solo feature. I thought they handled that really well because that's always a tricky thing to do, and that doesn't always work. But what I like about what he brings to the performance, while we're still on the topic of Chadwick, is he is so good at seeming or feeling both like approachable and humorous, but also he has this air of authority about him and stillness, calmness, where
Right.
you're like, oh, he is the king.
Yes.
But he can also crack a joke or two.
Yeah, that was what stood out to me was in Black Panther, he has a very serious motivation and a very serious reason to be there. He has little moments of vulnerability, but not a lot because he's on this like vengeance quest, right? Until the end where he sort of takes the high road. And in this one, you get to see he gets to let his guard down. He gets to be a big brother. He gets to be a son. He gets to be a still in love ex-boyfriend, and things like that. Like, so we get to see a more rounded version of the character T'Challa. And Chadwick was great at it, where he, like you said, Josh, he commands a sense of authority like he is, the prince and heir to the throne, and people respect him. But at the same time, he's able to joke around with his sister. He's able to, be teasing and be not, I don't want to say funny as though he's like cracking jokes left and right, but it's very real, natural humor that he
Yeah.
has. And
He doesn't try too hard to
can
be
turn
funny.
that switch and he can be aggressive when he needs to be.
Yeah, he's kind of
It's
That's really
the
good. It's what I think ideally it's what you want to do when you introduce a character as sort of a side. Yeah, when you introduce a character in another movie as a side character, and you're like, we want to spin them off into their own thing, is you want to grow that character, you want to evolve that character.
Well, in this movie in itself, at least, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, is the best overall Marvel movie that they have. It doesn't feel like a Marvel movie. It doesn't, a lot of standalone superhero Marvel movies, especially at this stage in the game, they rely a lot on the crossover. They rely a lot, like Doctor Strange is, I think, the worst about it, where, you have some Doctor Strange characters, like Wong is the original Doctor Strange, obviously, but like the supporting characters around Doctor Strange are usually other characters from other movies. And so you're not getting that whole world. In this one, you get the world and you get the characters, and it doesn't feel like a Marvel movie. It just feels like a hero, the protector of this nation and this transition of power. And then you have the family dynamic. And then Killmonger is the best villain that Marvel's had in a standalone movie that isn't across so many. I mean, he's relatable as a person. He's gone through things and you feel for him while you don't root for him. You can kind of see where he's coming from in every performance that they give and the culture that they show. And it's just so different than what you get from anything else from Marvel. And it's just, I mean, I can't say much else.
Right. I mean, the MCU's built a lot of worlds outside of Earth that we've gotten to see, and none of them are quite as rich as Wakanda, which ironically is on Earth, which I find funny. It doesn't, Asgard is really cool, and that's probably the closest they've gotten to creating what I think feels like a fully realized place. But Wakanda, the way that they merge like traditional arts with futuristic technology, I think is what helps it stand out. It's just so cool. Wakanda is such a cool place,
Yes.
and that is what helps that's what helps a lot of Black Panther standing out on its own, I think.
Well, and so you got to give it up to the production design. You got to give it up to the costumes, the hair, the graphic artwork, and the visual effects artists, because all of those little things that honestly most people, when they talk about a movie, they talk about They talk about the acting, they talk about the writing, and they talk about maybe the direction, stuff like that. But like all those little things, all those aspects, and usually that's what Andrew sings the praises of. All those little things that
Right.
get the unpopular section of the Academy Awards. Those go so far to building a world that feels real. And this movie, like
Yeah.
you said, Nikki told me that this feels like it was a shift in the way, like this was like a recognizable Black Panther as a recognizable shift in the step up for Marvel. It'd been 10 years of Marvel movies, right? And I would say that like Iron Man is like that foundation. It starts it and it kind of gets you on a path. Avengers blows it up and then they kind of try to separate back out into their own things. Civil War with the Russos really changed a lot of dynamics about the thing. But when Black Panther came out, it was like, here's a new hero, here's a new world, a new thing to get invested in, and they knocked it out of the park. They made it feel so authentic that you were like, yeah, you had people who were not that bright thinking Wakanda is a real place. You had people who were like, wow, this place like looks like a really cool place. Every aspect of it that they could hit made it feel authentic, made it feel real. And then all of the Marvel superhero blockbuster components are what they need to be, are exactly what they need to be. And then the layers of character work in it, the dynamic between T'Challa and Killmonger are what they need to be. All of those relationships feel exactly how they need to be.
And yeah, Black Panther took home the Oscar for best production design and best costume design, as you mentioned there. Those jobs make a huge difference, and they were rightly honored for it. This is also Marvel's first Best Picture nominee. Did not win, of course, but first, is it a first superhero movie?
No, I don't.
What's the other one?
No.
Did The Dark Knight?
The Dark Knight did not.
Dark Knight was nominated for a top 5 award. It got Best Supporting Actor, but I don't think it was in the.
Anyway, historic nomination while Dave researches that. So it's just hard to argue that it's not. They're the best movie the studio's made, particularly when you look at it from the perspective of this is telling more of a singular story and is launching a character and is not an in-game style culmination of a whole franchise, because it's hard to compare the two in that way for me. But super good. I'm trying to think of other things about the movie I want to talk about, because in my brain I keep wanting to talk about the impact and the cultural impact. But man, it's just a fun movie. All that aside,
Yeah, the way they handle the technology, I mean, Sherry is basically Q. I mean, the technology and the way that it's introduced, one of my favorite parts is whenever he is looking at the suit and he's got the necklace and then he kicks it really hard and they have that whole little brother sister back. And then she's explaining how it takes the kinetic energy and holds it and then it's like kick it again and it like knocks him back as hard. And you feel like, having an older sister and playing jokes on each other, I feel like she did that on purpose, set him up just so she knock him flying because she's recording the whole thing. And, that's fun. I think the fight choreography is fantastic. David, you talked about the blockbuster elements. That is one of the fight choreography for the whole thing is just amazing. I mean, when they're in Busan, I think is where they are in the casino, and you have Claw, and then you have Martin Freeman. I don't remember his character's name.
Martin Freeman.
Everett had that whole
Rough.
interaction. You have that whole interaction there, and it's just so well done. And the car chase is amazing. It really is. I mean, yeah, everything that they did is just a home run.
The crazy thing about it, and is that they bring in Ryan Coogler, who had Creed under his resume by this point, but really comes in and does have brings a very real style to it while still kind of matching a lot of the vibes of the, the bigger MCU that we've seen before. But hey, do a superhero fight sequence. Okay. There's been a billion of those. How do you make that feel original? Right. But they managed to do it. There's like a brief, implied one take shot in the middle of this fight sequence. That makes it feel cool. You've got, bless you, Garrett. They've got various, you got various other ways. And then there's a short, brief fight at the beginning, and it's mostly in darkness. But when, Black Panther goes to get Nakia and he's in the dark and he's in the shadows and he's, taking out, I don't know what they are, rebels or, some kind of fighters, guys with guns, bad guys. That's really cool. They've found a lot of unique ways to have like a Black Panther fight. But also, this movie sort of lives like the parts of this movie. There are two fights. There are two fights in this movie sort of live in my head, and that's the fights on the waterfall. It's the challenge fights for the throne of Wakanda that I think about just because they're raw and they're like, they're not hand to hand, but they're like traditional classic fights. And the stake is, being the ruler of Wakanda when M'Baku comes out and they're just like chanting. It's so intimidating and so real and so cool. But yeah, it feels like it has a history, and it feels like everything is on the line for this country. What next, guys? What next? Because I feel like we could go beat by beat on this movie.
What are some of your favorite moments? There are some really fun ones that have become almost meme worthy, which the biggest one is Shuri's "What are those?" to the shoes.
What are those? I gotta, people today. So the TikTok community is worse than the Reddit community was when, Reddit was big, I think, because you have people now, 2022, and they'll be like, oh, how cringeworthy is that "what are those" joke, right? I'm like, that got a huge laugh in 2018 when I was in the theater. I don't know about you guys. Sitting at the theater, she goes, "What are those?" And the whole crowd laughed, man. It was hilarious. It actually genuinely was funny. Or people will complain about the CGI in the final fight. They'll complain about the rhinos. I don't care. Rhinos are cool. But my favorite parts, honestly, are probably their lines. I love, him taking down that plane and he comes up and he goes, "I am not dead," right? Great. I think the confrontation when Killmonger comes into Wakanda and he reveals that he is Njobu and he is there to challenge that's one of my favorite fights, or one of my favorite scenes is the confrontation, and T'Challa he's like, "I know who you really are," and I don't know why he didn't just call him out and say, "This guy took Killmonger from me." I don't know why he didn't do that, because he once he saw that ring, it's like that's the guy. Then it's like the reason Killmonger got away is because this guy kidnapped him and took him from me. Like, anyway, I like that scene. And trying to think of another one like specifically. Now come back to me. You guys will say other ones. Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, okay. Well, the car chase scene that we talked about a little bit earlier is one of my favorites. I just love a good high-speed chase, and that was a fun one. I really like the way they incorporated the technology of having Shuri drive it via like holographic remote control. That was super cool.
I feel that far off now.
No, it doesn't. It feels like we're getting closer to that with the automatic or the driverless cars that are going around. Apparently, I hope to never encounter one. And I thought that Killmonger's death scene was really nicely done. The way that he chooses to die rather than being taken away to prison or whatever, and that T'Challa allows that and just like sets him up to watch over Wakanda and die. It's cool. It's touching in a way that you don't always get from movies like this.
Yeah.
What about you, Garrett? Any particular scene stand out?
I think I talked about mine already.
The first 2 hours?
The first 2 hours and 15 minutes of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So go back. Yeah. So this was the first traditional superhero movie to be nominated for Best Picture.
And if y'all remember, I feel like, at the time, it didn't feel like a, courtesy nomination or something. There were moments where it's like, I don't know, I think Black Panther could win. It didn't ultimately.
What one? What year?
It's 2018.
I don't know. We don't have Andrew. He could just
That's true.
spit that out.
Let's see here. So it would have been the 2019 awards, right?
Yeah. I think it was something good.
Yeah. So the other half of that conversation is, and getting nominated for Best Picture is this was a culturally relevant movie, like a culturally important movie, despite the fact that there have technically been other African-American superhero movies before Black Panther. The MCU,
it was Green Book.
It was Green Book.
It was not a good one. Never mind. It should have been Black Panther.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe created this larger than life fandom, or, this massive fandom, and they started to become this expectation of like, okay, you've got the Avengers, you've got this huge superhero team with all these cool superheroes. Like, where are the women, and where are the African Americans, or just where are the Black people? Where are the people of color in this franchise? Where do we get to be? And so this huge expectation came along Black Panther gets introduced in Civil War, and then he gets a movie, and it's huge. Like, it's huge, and it's culturally significant. And it was politically at a time where people were having a lot of conversations about representation and diversity. And we'll get to the box office numbers later, but the movie does huge numbers. It comes out in the middle of Black History Month, and it comes, it is the last movie before the giant event film of Avengers Infinity War. So, like, there's all these elements playing in, and then you go in and find out, hey, it's actually a really good movie. And it's really interesting. And it has a lot of deeper themes beyond just beyond just blockbusters. It has conversations about what does it mean to be loyal to your country. It has conversations about tradition versus progress. It has conversations, or it introduces conversations about the idea of colonization and appropriation of culture, things like that. There was one more thing that I wanted, more of those that I wanted to mention, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, T'Challa directly says at the end of the movie that fools build walls, great men build bridges, or something like that. Great people build bridges. During a time in American culture where wall building was becoming a very popular piece of rhetoric. So, like, the Academy, for some reason, they looked at it and they said, we got to put this on. It's a huge movie and it's very good. So it's impressive that they actually did, because the second film to be nominated for Best Picture that was, let's say, based on a comic book would be Joker. So that would be a totally different scenario. Right?
I don't like it. No, you're right. Do you guys remember those viral videos of the kids dancing when they had found out that their whole class was going to get taken to see Black Panther? Because that was another thing that they did, where they would take. I'll find it and put it in our Discord that you can get access to on Patreon, because it's really heartwarming. There was some kind of campaign where they would pay for entire class
Kids can go to field trips.
Yeah, to take field trips to go see Black Panther. It was really cool and heartwarming. So I will find some of those and share them again, because they're nice. But yeah, you made a lot of good points about the cultural impact regarding the political situation at the time and all that. It is easier to see in hindsight why this movie caught the Academy's attention, because it is a lot deeper than you would typically get from something like this, because you don't expect, people don't expect their comic book movies to come with a side of, political commentary and hard conversations like that. So, respect.
Especially not with the way that there's sort of the rhetoric around the MCU, that it's sort of just this sort of like long collective cash grab where,
You activated my watch.
Sorry about that.
I don't know how.
I don't know. Why don't make the word where that, and most MCU movies don't have necessarily a larger political message, but I think they could. I think that they really could. I think that one could argue that just the presence of doing a movie based on Black Panther is or Captain Marvel or Shang-Chi, the Eternals, are political statements in themselves, because while there is a greater demand for diversity today, there is definitely a strong backlash against diversity these days. Anyhow, I felt like once you get into the Academy conversation, you kind of have to talk about the cultural impact the movie had.
You do. Well, let's go ahead and use that as an opportunity to talk a little bit about how this movie performed financially.
Okay. Also, while I'm pulling up my notes here, a little detail I found. I'll have to fact check this, but I think it's fine to say. The first superhero movie to receive any sort of nomination at the Academy from the Academy was The Mask of Zorro in 1940. It was nominated for Best Music and Original Score.
I honestly don't know that I've seen that.
I don't think I have either. 1940's The Mask of Zorro.
I don't think I've seen any version of The Mask of Zorro.
Even with Catherine Zeta-Jones and don't know back.
That's the one from the 2000s.
Right.
Or 1990s or something like that.
I want to watch it.
The most what a trailer, right? What a trailer. That's what I remember. Yes, so let's look at the box office performance for Black Panther. The character would debut way back in 1966, but he would not get a film until February 16th of 2018. It was massive. It was a massive opening weekend. At the time, I believe it was the third highest opening weekend of that point. Like, it was huge. Now that's been bumped down since then, but it would bring in $202 million opening weekend, which, by the way, is just $5 million less than The Avengers in 2012 and more than any other MCU movie to that point. Unfortunately for this movie, in the number 2 spot, you had Peter Rabbit, which in its second brought in 17.
Starring James Corden as Peter Rabbit's favorite person right now.
right? At number 3, you had 50 Shades Freed, which I assume is the third movie in the 50 Shades franchise.
It's got to be one of them.
At number 4, you had Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle in its 9th weekend, brought in 7.9. And at number 5, The 517 to Paris brought in 7.5 million. Going forward for the rest of the year, Black Panther would just dominate records. Highest ever gross for a movie in February, highest grossing this, highest grossing that. It would go on to make $700 million in the domestic box office. That's just in the United States. This movie joins the $700 million club for 2018. That's good enough to be the number 1 movie in the United States, beating out Infinity War, which I'll remind you was the big event film of this year. This movie made more money than the Team Up, which that movie also featured Black Panther. I remember Joe and Anthony Russo on the DVD talk about going to the premiere of Infinity War and being really surprised when Wakanda shows up, when they first go to Wakanda in Infinity War, and there was a massive cheer for Wakanda, for T'Challa to show up. They were like, we did not anticipate that being a moment where the crowd was going to explode in excitement, but there you go. So number 1 movie domestically of 2018, so this is just the US and Canada, I believe, is Black Panther, followed by Avengers: Infinity War. Incredibles 2 would be in number 3 spot with 608 million. Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom finished number 4. You can listen to our podcast about that
If you want.
with 417. And then at number 5,
I did if you want. I don't know that I would.
Well, you get both of them. That was the one we did a twofer. You get Jurassic World 1 and Jurassic World:
That's
Fallen
true.
Kingdom.
Okay.
And then Aquaman finished number 5 with 335 million. The big year for sequel is 2018.
Yeah. Well,
Panther, if you don't count Black Panther as a sequel in the ever-growing Marvel Cinematic Universe franchise, then it was the highest-grossing non-sequel, though it could technically be a sequel to Civil War. The highest-grossing like non-superhero or franchise movie would be Bohemian Rhapsody at number 10 with 216. Just behind it, though, was A Star Is Born, but that's a remake. So
crazy, though, that you got to go all the way to number 10 to find one.
10, you want to hear the full 10? The number 9 is Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah,
Number
quickly.
8 is Mission Impossible Fallout. And number 7, The Grinch. Number 6 is Deadpool 2.
A lot of good movies that year, at least.
It is a fun year for movies. You know, the numbers are a little different worldwide. Avengers: Infinity War would finish in the number 1 spot with Black Panther number 2. For the MCU, Black Panther was at one point, you know, when it came out, that year, the highest grossing MCU movie. It's been supplanted a little bit. It's now the number 3 highest grossing behind Spider-Man: No Way Home and Avengers: Endgame. What was that other stat? All time, Black Panther now sits at number 6. It was for a brief time the 3rd highest grossing movie of all time, just behind Avatar and Star Wars: The Force Awakens. But it has been moved down to number 6 behind Top Gun: Maverick, Avatar, Spider-Man: No Way Home, Avengers: Endgame, and Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
Are you telling me that Top Gun Maverick is now in the top 5 highest grossing of all time?
Top Gun Maverick, little update from earlier this year.
I didn't know it had gone that far.
It's now at $716 million.
Top Gun, baby!
People wanted it.
It's number 5?
It's number 5. It will not reach number 4. As of this last weekend, it only brought in $100,000.
Re-release.
So it is very unlikely at 716 to catch up to Avatar, which is at 785. But it has passed Black Panther. It has passed Avengers: Infinity War. Top Gun Maverick has passed the Titanic, all of those movies. And so it and Black Panther sit comfortably in the 700 million club, you know, with all those other movies on top.
It was a great movie.
And I think that's really all I have. I was going to talk about opening weekends, but, you know, don't really talk about. Oh, here was the one detail I had. So Black Panther was the number 1 movie at the box office in the US for 2018. It's one of only 4. People think that the MCU dominates the box office, but it's only 4 times that's happened. Only 4 MCU movies have been the number 1 movie at the end of the year.
Well, how about that?
I think it's Endgame, Black Panther, the first Avengers movie, and I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, that's all I have. I also had a weird fun fact about Black Panther and the Black Panther Party. The political party. I had a fun fact about that I can do, but I think we're moving on anyway.
Yeah, we'll see. But save it for the internet. I guess. I don't know. Yeah, let's talk about now what we are. I mean, we've talked a lot about the impact of this movie, so I think, you know, this is going to be this actually might be difficult to judge what the Letterboxd score is, just because it honestly gets trickier the higher it goes. So,
There's a lot of haters out there.
and there are some haters, sure, of various varieties. So, what are our guesses going to be for the letterbox average of Black Panther? Which you can find all of us on Letterboxd and follow us there for more. I'm gonna
say you or Garrett go first.
I'm gonna say I don't think it's under a 4, quite frankly. So I'm gonna say 4.3.
Oh man, that's high.
I know.
I don't hate that. But
I know
think it's high. I feel like I was gonna go on the 4s. I was gonna do 4.1.
4.1. Well, there's no reason for me not to say 4.0. So I will say a 4.0 is what Black Panther has on Letterboxd.
That's true. That's true. If our risk doesn't pay off, then you
Personally, my favorite app/website for movie discourse, Letterboxd. You better. What's the answer, Josh? Who wins this week?
So the winner is David.
Hey,
Garrett and I both overshot the Letterboxd score. I was very wrong. It was not a 4.0. It is a 3.7.
It's a 3.7, really?
It's a 3.7.
You know, my initial guess was going to be 3.9. But with you guys in the 4s, I was like, well, I might as well guess a 4 as well.
I agree that feels a little low.
Yeah. Because, boys, this is a 5-star friggin' movie for me.
I mean, oh yeah, same. It's a 5-star for me. There's literally nothing I think that I feel like I could complain about.
Yeah, I mean, so if you've seen my Letterboxd the other day, when I watched it, I just kind of instinctively did a 4.5. But I think this conversation has easily talked me into a 5 because, I don't have anything really negative to say. I just usually don't give them out that freely. But
I did, same. And I was considering at the beginning of this going down to a 4.5 because I looked up my review that's currently up and it was a 5-star movie. And I was like, well, do I have any reason to knock it down from that? And I really can't think of one. If I was going to think of one, it would have stood out in this rewatch. I would have went, oh, this hasn't aged well, or, oh, that doesn't look so good anymore, or I didn't care for this. But honestly, I like everything about it. I love the Tolkien white guys. They're great. I love the Tolkien white guys. You know, I love that. I like that final fight. People complain about they don't like CGI. It looks like a PlayStation game, but I like it. I think it's fun. I like the writing.
I mean, normally I try to pick through some popular Letterboxd reviews to find funny ones. And when I look today, they're pretty sincere reviews. I don't mean to say they're bad because we had that Letterboxd conversation. I mean, they're like thought out and they're well thought out reviews. There's not a lot of jokey ones. I mean, I got a jokey one. Best Black James Bond movie imaginable is from a 4-star review. That's pretty good. This was more of a Civil War than Civil War, which I don't disagree.
What's more going on here?
Yeah.
And then this will be the last one for me. 4 stars. Oh my God, this made every other Marvel movie look total shit in comparison. Ryan Coogler, you legend.
Ryan Coogler's great.
Only words of truth right there.
Yeah.
There's a great video with Winston Duke, and I think he's hanging out with Sebastian Stan, maybe somebody else, and they're reading thirst tweets about them. And someone wrote, "M'Baku can throw my back out."
That is a good one.
It was really funny, and it's stuck with me every time I see M'Baku when I rewatch these movies because he's in Infinity War. I'm like, man, he can throw my back out.
I like it.
Winston Duke's great too. We didn't talk about some of the underrated actors. Winston Duke is in this. Great.
He is great.
There's no misses in this movie. I mean,
perfect.
Great.
What's his name? The guy who plays Wakabi in this. He was just in Nope.
Daniel.
That's it.
Yeah, he's great. The cast doesn't miss at all.
No, it's great.
Everyone's great. Michael B. Jordan is a great villain. Martin Freeman is just great doing whatever he does.
Yeah.
Right. Why not?
Andy Serkis, hello. He was phenomenal as Claw.
I don't know how he laughs like that. He laughs in like a weird, like coughing wheeze laugh. Like
that man can do things with his voice that don't make sense.
He does it. But yes, they are the Tolkien white guys because they're the Hobbit.
I like that. That's funny.
That's it.
Let's get into before we move on and wrap this up. Let's talk about predictions for Wakanda Forever.
Yeah.
Anthony, do we know? I mean, obviously, David, you posed in our Discord a question to people about like what they think, but I wanted some reviews of this one and the next one. But you asked some box office questions. Do we think it's going to make more? Do we think this is going to be as successful? What's the hype? Who's the next Black Panther? What are we gonna? Do we have any predictions whatsoever?
Right. I mean, it's not going to make more, I don't think, just because I don't think that kind of cultural moment can be achieved again in this environment.
I argue Chadwick Boseman's death might be able to bring out more support than people think. And I
I
think that it could, I think that opening day, it would be, I think that its opening day could be equally similar. I don't think it will make as much money. Sorry.
I was just going to say from an opposing perspective, I'm afraid that the lack of Chadwick Boseman will decrease interest because I will say it has for me very slightly. I'm concerned about how this movie works without him. That's my prediction. I'm not going to say I'm expecting it to be bad or anything, but this is not, no matter how you look at it, this is not the movie we were supposed to get.
Right.
They had to throw it all out and go back to scratch. So I have some concerns that I feel like are reasonable, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah, I think one, until proven otherwise, I feel like Shuri's going to take up the mantle of Black Panther. And I could be proven wrong. It could be any number of other characters, but I think thematically that makes the most sense. So and I've kind of avoided watching a lot of the trailers. I watched the big one when they came back with what is it? Is it Drake and No Woman No Cry? That trailer. I watched that one. So I think it's going to be Shuri, or there may be a weird scenario where the movie ends and there's like 3 Black Panthers. Who knows? But I'm really looking forward to Namor, which is the new official pronunciation of that character's name. I think that's going to be a really interesting new world. Ryan Coogler has created one incredible world. Why not create another one? And I do think that the movie itself, I think there will be a lot of interest because Chadwick Boseman isn't it. So I do think there will be a lot of early, like opening weekend interest, like you said, Garrett. I don't know if it'll make 202 million. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness made 187 million opening weekend. Spider-Man No Way Home made, I think, 260 opening weekend. I think between 190 and then even 200 is pretty reasonably. I think that's a good guess. So I'm going to say like between 190 and 200 million. Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, that's the biggest one of the year. Thor did okay. It did about average for an MCU movie, but Multiverse of Madness made 411 million worldwide, or I'm sorry, domestically. So I think between 450 and 500 million, I think is very possible for this, especially if people come out loving it. Like if they come out loving it, then word of mouth will keep it going because that's where my gut is. I could be wrong, and I probably will be wrong because I'm only so good at this guessing game. I would not have predicted Top Gun Maverick to make $700 million.
Right.
I don't know. I think from my perspective, I think that Ryan Coogler's proven himself. And I think that he, while had to pivot, I think he'll pivot fine. I think that he'll want to honor Boseman. And I think that everyone in this movie will deliver an absolute mega performance because they will have him in mind during this entire process.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of intrigue about what they're going to do. I think that people are maybe not as concerned about the movie, but I think they're interested in what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I think that Shuri, while the most obvious, I think that's my least want. I think you lose too much.
That's my least one too. It would disappoint me if Shuri is Black Panther.
I think you lose too much with her just going into Black Panther because then who steps in to progress and do the technological aspects? Like her brain is an asset in of itself as Shuri to be able to do that. There's nobody else that's proven that they can handle that technology. So while she can do both, I think that somebody like Nakia or Okoye are two options that people are sleeping on. And I think that Nakia is my pick to be Black Panther. I mean, it's Lupita Nyong'o. That's a great name to have attached to you long term. She proved in the last one that she could fight, and she left Jem. So depending on how they're going to handle the king and the transition, she might be out and ready to challenge for the king and the queen shit because she was already about to be queen. So I think there's a lot of interesting directions that they could take that they've laid.
Yeah, I think I like that better. I do. I just think Shuri would be the laziest pick possible. And yeah.
I'm just ready for that to be what's happening.
I know. I mean, I'm also ready for it to be what happens, but I am telling everyone up front that I will be disappointed.
Honestly, I think it's more likely that Nakia becomes a bad guy going forward. Her character in the comics is a bad guy or was a bad guy at different times.
That's what makes this.
I think it's more likely for this to impact her in a way that her own direction. She makes her own choice. Like, and maybe I don't think goes full evil, but she starts, she says, forget this Wakanda situation.
That's what makes this such a good story. It's what makes Black Panther such a good movie, is it has presented us with all these options, and there's not even like we don't even fully agree on where it might go because there's so many options.
I do want to say too, we'll get into it more next week, but on the conversation of whether it was right to do it this way or whether they should have just recast the character and, let the character continue to honor Chadwick Boseman, but don't kill off his character. My personal stance has always been and will always be whatever Ryan Coogler thinks is best.
Yeah.
Because he has been given, I know a lot of people don't want to think this, he's been given control of this. This is his corner of this, expanded universe. Whatever he thinks is the right thing to do, I'm fine with. He has all my trust on that. If he had wanted to recast, I would have said, okay, it'll be weird, but that's the right thing to do. Ryan said so, right? That's just how I go with it.
I think that's respectful enough. Yes, I would agree that, he's close enough to this project that whatever he wants is what should be done. All right. Well, there's our predictions. They're all over the place. We'll find out who was right and who was wrong. You know what? I hope that we're all wrong about everything.
Yeah.
And I hope that somehow this is like defies our expectations in different ways, because that's fun. But we'll find out next week when we will be back with a very fresh review of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I'm going to tell you right now that I don't see how we don't have a spoiler-filled episode. So make your plans to see Black Panther 2 this upcoming weekend, if you can, and save the podcast for later if you can. Sound fair? But that's it for us. You can find us online at all your favorite haunts, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter while it exists, Facebook, all those places. And then, of course, our Patreon is at So Many Sequels at Patreon, and you can subscribe there and join our Discord and have fun with us in there. I think that's all. I think that's my list of things to say. So we'll see you all next time. Bye.